Hi folks, welcome to the MWIS Friday Planner in association with Ellis Brigham. Now we know the score out there still at the moment, so hopefully you're able to enjoy something of the great outdoors on your doorstep. Things are looking less cold in the immediate future compared to where we've been so far in 2021, with some freeze and thaw cycles developing on the mountains, a bit of variation of temperature from day to day, some rain coming into the forecast as well, chiefly focused on western regions, but as those temperatures do just fluctuate, there's the risk of some ice forming where some of the snow cover does thaw and then things refreeze again, so that might be a hazard early next week. We shall start off with a look at freezing level. This then is in metres, the 0 Celsius level, and you can keep an eye on the time in the bottom of the screen. We start with freezing conditions into the valleys and the glens to start off Saturday morning. Widespread frost, a hard frost in many places as skies are clear. We do, though, already have milder air showing itself over the Atlantic, and that will start to move in as we head onwards through Saturday daytime across northwest Scotland, with the freezing level lifting here even towards around 1,000 metres showing on this chart. Now, a tricky situation developing across the Highlands because some of that cold, dense air that hangs about inland in the valleys and the glens is hard to completely get out of the way straight away, so you might well find that some of the terrain stays well and truly frozen well down into the glens, whilst temperatures are starting to lift above freezing on some middle slopes. It's one where the precipitation that comes in can be a mixture of snow and sleet and some freezing rain in places as that cold air just hangs in pockets in some of the inland glens. As we head onwards later Saturday, though, the likelihood is that those temperatures do just lift towards or just above freezing point towards around 900, 1,000 metres, maybe even a touch higher around the west coast of Scotland. A day where things are what we'd call sort of isothermal in some respects, where actually the temperature fall with height on the mountains from sea level up to higher slopes is only very gradual. So compared to normal, where you might get quite a marked drop of temperature with height. Notice how already across England and Wales we've got freezing conditions showing to the 0 level, which is essentially sea level, then showing that there's frost forming under still clear skies across the Midlands and the south into Saturday evening. That milder wodge of air just moves across northern Britain, though. We still have a bit of a boundary across northern Scotland where a cold front will lie, and the northernmost parts of the Highlands still just sticking with a lower freezing level and maybe some snowfall across higher terrain for a time there overnight into Sunday. Sunday daytime broadly is in milder air for all, and the freezing level shown here is at around 1,000 metres. Again, there may be only small variation of temperature with height on higher slopes, but lower down likely to be lifting a good few degrees above freezing. So a thaw developing for many places through Sunday. Those highest Scottish tops, though, and the highest tops in England and Wales are still close to freezing, so any thawing is gradual here. Onwards into the start of next week, and very similar situation early on Monday morning. That boundary line still lies across the north of Scotland, so that will need watching in terms of the rain to snow boundary across the north of the Highlands during Monday daytime, otherwise under relatively less cold air. Now, interesting as we go onwards later Monday into Monday night, because what looks likely is that a cold front will start to sink southwards, and that lowering of freezing level comes back across Scotland in towards northern England as we go overnight. As a front pushes southwards, colder air comes back down from the north-northwest, and that may well produce some snow on the back edge of a front as it begins to clear. Initially rain and then the freezing level dropping as the front is just moving through, and then frost developing if skies are clearing behind that to the valleys and the glens. You can see that freezing level having come down. Tuesday daytime then, you're back to around 200 to 400 metres, so a colder day on the cards for Tuesday. I'll show you how that develops on the synoptic charts, just to put a different spin on things. Basically, this is Saturday, the warm front that's coming off the Atlantic, then that's that first arrival of milder air off the Atlantic. The high pressure area that's in across England, Wales and the south of Scotland is keeping things generally fair and bright, with some low-level fog patches and terrain frozen through Saturday. The winds are strengthening across Scotland as west by southwesterlies, not far off gale force across northernmost tops. A windy day across the Scottish Highlands on Sunday. We've got those fronts then trailing through with murky, damp conditions across western mountains, not much precipitation the further east you go, and the risk of low cloud and dregs of drizzliness around Irish Sea coast as well. Lighter winds the further south that you go, and we've got those relatively milder temperatures. Monday, this is where that boundary is drawn across northern Scotland with that cold front just drifting around. Still a murky, damp picture across western Scotland, some dampness across into the Cairngorms perhaps as well. The risk of some snow across the far north in that colder air mass, and still could be rather murky with a damp sort of west by southwesterly flow around Irish Sea coastal hills as well. Something a bit brighter toward the eastern side of the Pennines perhaps. Now, things have moved fairly quickly by the time we get into Tuesday. That's where that cold front comes southwards overnight, so uncertainty with just how things progress by this stage, but that chillier air coming down, and if we do just get a wraparound of a further front tangled around the low, that's the prospect for some snowfall in places across, let's say, the south of Scotland, north of England on Tuesday, but that is very much open to question at this time. We've been dragged back into colder air from the north, it does look like. Now, we can't get that clever with the forecasting into midweek at this stage, quite a bit just to develop in the weather sequence by then. This is where we've got to by Tuesday then, that area of low pressure moving off to Scandinavia, just opening that door to a colder northwesterly. We've got a ridge of higher pressure building from the west and the south, and then another weather system somewhere out over the mid-Atlantic. As we just knock things on tentatively day by day, we just see that ridge topples in as we go into Wednesday, so a clear, cold, frosty start is believable under that ridge of high pressure on Wednesday morning, but maybe going downhill already from the west as some fronts would come in associated with that next little area of low pressure that's out over the Atlantic. So maybe the scope for some rain preceded by some snow over the hills before temperatures do just begin to rise again for a spell as we head through the middle of the week, Wednesday into Thursday, as the flow looks as though it turns more southwesterly by that stage. Now, very complicated, just to see how things pan out later on. This is only one particular forecast model. There's various solutions floating around at the moment. Not an easy one to get detail late on. Basically, the idea that milder air has a go at getting in, but it sort of collapses away back towards France and Spain, and we're left with relatively cool air that's still in existence around Thursday into Friday. Little areas of low pressure without having too much oomph to them, basically. They've got little various centres going around, and maybe enough to produce some areas of rain, sleet and snow, an awkward wintry mix with some snow over the hills if these little features do move through, but they're not looking particularly powerful weather systems at this stage. We're staying under fairly cool conditions, especially toward the north of Britain, with the idea of high pressure just trying to recenter itself north of Scotland by the end of the week, and maybe dragging in a chillier east by northeasterly flow. This is not set in stone, so it might not come out as this chart shows, but it's one of the suggestions that we're sort of working with at this stage. The idea of slack high pressure and fairly chilly, frosty conditions being in the picture, but we're not desperately cold, and equally we're not particularly mild, I think, as we head towards that next weekend around the 16th and 17th. And we leave things on a knife edge, really, as we go to the very end of the sensible forecast range, which is around 10 days out, where the battle lines are drawn between some very cold air that's lurking around Scandinavia toward the north and some much milder air that lies over the Atlantic to our southwest. And which one of those wins out at that point will then dictate more or less where things go into the second half of the month. We shall keep an eye on all those developments here at MWIS. That's been your Friday Planner in association with Ellis Brigham. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.